Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. After one of the most monumental election days, not only in the nation, but here in Missouri, we're very honored to be joined by our current governor, Jay Nixon. Mr. Governor Nixon, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Great to be with you.
We're thrilled to have you on because you're somebody who's ran for office in Missouri, overwhelmingly elected governor twice. You're from Jefferson County. I think you might be a unique person to have served in government, but be from an area that understands a Trump voter. Why did he win, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think a couple of reasons. First of all, he hit a nerve, a clear nerve, a kind of populist outsider nerve that he was able to use both in the primary and the Republican side as well as in the general election. And two, I just think that Missourians never warmed up to Secretary Clinton. I mean, it was never a race in which she was, making progress, and so we always knew the Republican was going to have a wide avenue to run in Missouri with she as our candidate.
You know, you were able to run with a president that didn't do well in Missouri in 2012, and you won and flipped that. Why do you think Trump had more coattails this time?
Well, I don't know when you say by coattails, I mean, the folks that got elected statewide Republicans got far fewer votes than he did. And, the governor at 51%, the senator less than that. So I think it was more of a Trump move than a partisan move. Why do I think I worked really hard. I know the state well. I'm certainly not going to say anything to be derogatory to anybody else running, but I think the people of the state of Missouri knew me. They knew I worked in the middle. They knew I was able to bring people together. They saw my 16 years as Attorney General, where I'd fought for them each and every day. And then after the first term as governor, they understood that if there was pressure was on and things needed to be handled, whether it's a fiscal crisis or a tornado in Joplin, that they had somebody that was willing to bring people together and lead.
You know, it looks like we saw a little bit of that this week as you brought the governor-elect Eric Greitens in. What did you think of him? What did you think of his campaign?
Well, I mean, I think the campaigns, when you're in this job, the campaigns seem stunningly simplistic. I mean, in the sense that the message field you deal with, the responsibilities of this position are much broader than clips of sound bites. So that, as we begin the process, trying to make sure that he, who's a capable and intelligent fellow, understands the breadth of the office, and that we're really open with moving forward with him to maintain fiscal discipline, to keep the progress on things we're involved in, and to make sure that he has the information he needs to make the decisions over the next few years to keep the state moving forward.
You strike me as somebody that if Eric Greitens has a question in March, something he's never seen, you take his phone call.
Absolutely. I've really been helped by former governors. I think especially Governor Bond. He had that recession, 81, 82, that was kind of similar in a way. Ours was a little bigger when I came in, but the same kind of structure. And Kit was really helpful in that regard, and gave me some good advice and some strength to make decisions and make them quickly. Because if you have budget problems, you got to make decisions early. And the legislature's not going to solve those problems. I mean, all the legislature does is pass a budget authorization. The governor balances the budget. Mm-hmm. So you have to the Constitution gives you that responsibility. And so you have to make those choices. And I think as a former governor, as I said to Governor-elect Greitens, you guys are going to be in the same club sometime soon. Former governors, okay? It'll come faster than you think.
Let me ask you, while you've been there for 8 years, what's a day you're the most proud of?
Well, I do think that, when we, in an odd way, when school started in Joplin on August 17th after that tornado, and we had 98% of the kids show back up. I mean, I was really fearful that you could lose a town. When you have 7,500 houses gone, 161 people dead, 1,100 injured, 11,000 cars gone, 9 schools, and you were able to retrofit a high school into a mall in 54 days. You were able to build a middle school into an old factory. But most important, the people stayed, and they had confidence that the future of their community was going to be strong. And as I sat there with the principals and everybody else, literally getting the counts from each of the various middle schools and elementary schools, and seeing we were going over 96, 97, almost 98%, and compare that to Greenwood, Kansas, where fewer than 20% of the people still live in that town after the tornado. That was a moment in which I felt like, everybody tried really hard together. I was able to marshal some resources and work with the will and spirit of Missourians, and in a lot of ways, that town was saved.
I can't imagine being governor. I'm just a simple hillbilly from West Butler County, but as an outstate person, it looked like you personally cared about seeing Joplin come back.
It was, it very much personally. From day one, we were involved there. When you have that much loss, we had at one point 405 law enforcement agencies working under our unified command down there. And for me, it was incredibly personal because I gave the graduation speech at Missouri Southern on that Saturday, And then Sundays when the tornado happened, and when I got back there, that same room I'd given the speech in had 450 people on cots that had been injured. And while I was there, the sirens went off for the potentially next tornado, and we had to evacuate that place. So the things that you remember about it, the happiness of a graduation met by disaster. We stayed there. I was there, I believe, 10 of the first 11 days, 75 out of the first 85 days. In there, we set up a permanent resource center. And got to work very quickly and marshal resources and got done.
Let me ask you about a day you'd like to have back. Give me a decision you'd like to have another bite at the apple on.
A decision or something happened?
Something happened.
Something happened. I continue to believe that, you know, if you look at some of the bills that have been overridden, and once again, 283 of my vetoes have been sustained, a pretty good record. But I think on the fiscal side, that they're getting a little loose. Some of these tax breaks that they continue to pass, whether it's the retroactive one this year for ag or a special tax break for you know, the tax company over in Kansas City or wherever. These special interest tax breaks, also 509, I don't think it's good policy. I don't think that Kansas-style tax cut of saying we're going to give you a break on LLC money has created jobs in Kansas City. I think it's instead had people go to their accountants and say, how do I move my income to a way that doesn't have tax? I think it hasn't worked in Kansas, and even though it's a little smaller here and it will begin to go into effect, I don't think that's good policy. If you're going to cut taxes the way I have, getting rid of the franchise tax, getting rid of the tax on veterans, making sure we're keeping taxes low. I'm a Democrat that's held the line on taxes and cut taxes. I don't think that is the way to cut them. And long range, I think that's going to make it very difficult to fund the necessary services that can move the state forward.
Some folks look to Kansas and say they haven't cut a lot of spending. I mean, that seems to be part of their problem.
Right,
They've cut taxes, but they haven't cut the spending part.
Well, and I'll tell you, we did, and I saw him a couple of weeks ago. I'm forever thankful to Senator Rob Mayer for working with me. Back when the first part of this happened, you know, the House passes a big budget, and we got to the Senate, we got serious. Now we had to cut more after that. But I'll be forever thankful for Rob Mayer for being a real statesman in a difficult time for his state and standing up and standing with us and working to make sure that budget got a lot closer. Now the economy kept going down and I had to take more out of it. But I really appreciate the statesmanship and the knowledge he showed. And, you know, I went up to the Senate as the bill was being finished that day, and I waited on the side gallery to thank him on behalf of Missourians for the work he'd done. I think we got serious about cutting the budget. We now have 5,100 fewer employees. We have basically $1.5 billion less. That first year, I had to restrict dollars 7 different times.
The state's credit's good.
Absolutely. 11 states have had their credit rating drop, and ours has stayed the top in the country.
Speaking of money, let me ask you a question about a little bit different money. Campaign finance. You've been outspoken on it. You're someone that, you may be the last time you managed a divided government for some time in this state. It required some statesmanship, but you've ran on the system of limits and without limits. What's the differences, and which one's better?
I believe that limits to candidate committees, to the campaign committees themselves, are important. I went to the United States Supreme Court and argued that case personally, and we won it 6-3. Missourians have supported it once again on the ballot. I understand there's going to be money in politics. I understand there's going to be independent expenditures and coordinated expenditures. But I believe that the candidate committees should have limits, because what happens if you don't is two things. Huge checks and corrosive effect of directly to candidates that money, as opposed to coordinated or party expenditures or whatnot. And secondarily, candidates get a little lazy. Instead of going out and raising it 25 or 50 bucks or 100 bucks at a time, they just get wire transferred 40 grand out of some leadership PAC, and they don't have to do the hard work. And I'll tell you, as governor, there's been a number of times where I've been surprised that a local candidate didn't know as much about his district as I did. And I'll tell you, if you have to go out and do that sort of stuff, raise that money, and make those connections in your local community when you're running, that's a positive part of democracy. Money is involved in politics. I just think those candidate committees, and that's what the Supreme Court decision has held, are different and should be treated differently. Once again, I'm not here saying money's not going to be in politics and all that sort of stuff, but I do think that limiting the contributions to those candidate committees is a very important part of our
You know, it's an interesting thing. I worked in politics under limits, and you'd go to the golf tournament back in a rep's district, and you'd see the car dealer and the insurance company, and that means that legislator had to call them and talk to them about what they cared about and ask them if they'd sponsor a hole. Now you see lobbyist signs. You don't see a lot of local businesses writing those $200 or $300 checks, and it means they haven't had to talk to them a lot. And I think that is an interesting thing to lose. You lose some contact with that district.
Even when I ran for governor, we did things called 5Ks. On the weekends, I went out and did $25 and $50 a head events. 5K was our goal to raise $5,000 in small increments. Out there, we did 3-4 a day. And my donor base built up to tens of thousands, not by the internet, but by real people. And boy, they tell you stuff.
Yeah.
They really do. And plus in politics, when people, what's my line? Politics is the exact opposite of plumbing. If a plumber comes to your house and fixes something, you pay him, you never want to see him again. But if a politician comes and you give him $25, you get more invested and interested in what their future is. It's a little different feeling. So people that actually give something, whether it's time or put up a sign or put a bumper sticker on or a small check, they become more invested in the system. They become more invested in the candidate and democracy as a whole. If they think the system is rigged or controlled by a few smart people, a few rich people, they're much more cynical about the democracy that's so important for our country.
Will Missourians ever have the chance to vote for you again?
I don't think I'm going to run here for office again. Once you've been governor, I mean,
Yeah.
what other job is there?
Looks
I mean,
like the funnest job in the state.
Yeah, I mean, at 30, what is it? 30 years of working in to put you on the day shift. You know, I've had the chance to serve as a senator, to be attorney general, to argue the U.S. Supreme Court, to do all that work, to be governor in a difficult recession and get us out of there and get things moving forward, rebuild the auto industry in our state, do a lot of things. In the mental health system, we've done dramatic things. At the mental hospital, we're building unbelievably important. Take our park system to a tourism jewel. And I just don't. I think that getting out with, as I said before, with my integrity and some portion of my sense of humor intact, the First Lady and I are ready for the next
Let me
chapter.
just ask you in a real succinct way, what would you have that guy that's never wrote a check, that guy just a hardworking guy in the state, probably doesn't know what an SJR is, what would you like for that guy to remember about Governor Jay Nixon?
Well, he understood the state, the complexity of the state, and he understood me, and he was fighting for me. He wasn't fighting for himself, and he embodied our state. And when it came to money, he watched it very, very carefully. Didn't waste money. This wasn't a wasteful spender. And when decisions had to be made, he made them. And when things came at him where we had to move forward, he did. And when it comes to things like education, we've kept college affordable. #1 in the country, keeping tuition down. We've expanded the number of 4-year degrees 36%, 2-year degrees 44%. I'd like them to understand and know that I'm a guy that they can sit and have a beer with and they can talk to me, and I will understand what their problems are. But more importantly, I'll take that piece of information and go out and try to make things better.
Governor Nixon, thank you so much for joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thanks, Scott.
We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Jack Spooner's back, and Phelps County native Jack Cardetti. First, we'll leave you with this week's leading Missouri economic indicators.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople, while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
At Ameren, Missouri, we're committed to providing cleaner energy
for generations to come.
Our new state-of-the-art solar energy center is a great example of that commitment. It's part of our long-range plan to deliver more than 30% of our power from cleaner resources.
Making sure your energy future is not just brighter,
but cleaner too. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined for the first time by Representative Marcia Hafner here in St. Louis County. Thanks for joining us.
It's nice to be here.
Jack Cardetti, you'll notice, a little outnumbered, but it sort of reflects the new makeup of the state. You know, it just kind of worked out that way. Robert Cornell, you have the same number of friends plus one in Jeff City. My gosh, what are you going to do with all the Republicans?
I don't know. We were going to have to find some more office space here.
The MoDOT folks would maybe get some boxes, right?
Exactly.
And Jack Spooner, attorney, Republican, a guy that's worked for the Republican Party. I will say it, you were right. I was wrong. You predicted the sweep from the start. You predicted a Governor Greitens. You predicted a Trump presidency. I have to say, you saw it. You had to have a good night Tuesday night.
You know what? If the rest of my life was like that, it would be great. But yes, it was a good. This is the first time I'd say in my working life that my political beliefs, my political environment has meshed with my professional environment. Now we have all Republicans running the state and the country, and yeah, it's good. It's good news.
Robert Cornell, you were in Jeff City on Wednesday for caucus. You got the whole state. What are you going to do with it?
Kind of in the words of Peter Parker, as Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And so we started laying out some groundwork on Wednesday. Obviously haven't had a chance to sit down with Governor-elect Greitens. I know he met with Nixon to work on the transition. And once that transition is pretty much set up, we're going to meet with him and set the agenda. I mean, we have a few loose ideas, but as far as diving into the details, that's going to be over the next month and a half or so.
Representative Hafner, had to be a very joyous caucus meeting in Jefferson City this week. What did you guys decide on?
Well, we chose our leadership to begin with, and had a lot of discussions about, again, like Robert said, a lot of responsibility, and we've got a lot of work to do because people have high expectations now that we have House, Senate, and the governor's mansion.
You know, the Senate used to be a place where you could send some stuff for the House and it would die. It's a little more loose these days. Interesting thing. And then I thought it was very interesting that rising star in the party, Representative Elijah Hart, is the new Speaker Pro Tem.
Yes, I think he's going to be a good Speaker Pro Tem, and I'm just really looking forward to getting to work, and I hope that I can be part of the transition team for Governor Greitens.
Jack Cardetti, an interesting race. You're from outstate Missouri. I think the folks from, it was interesting, I heard some different broadcasts, and if you watch television news Wednesday, I mean, the CNN folks who probably don't know anybody that voted for Donald Trump or would admit it, just look depressed. I have a sense that just like the governor wasn't totally shocked, you probably weren't totally shocked either.
No, what we saw in Missouri and Ohio, Trump polling so well, clearly we underestimated that. He did so well in Michigan, Wisconsin, and ironically, he did well because he felt people's economic pain, something Bill Clinton used to be great at. And he really had a populist economic message, and despite every couple of weeks lighting himself on fire and whatnot, when he got back to talking about trade and those kind of things, he did well. Now, of course, you can't run whether you're Governor Greitens or Trump. You're no longer the outsider. You're in charge now, and now you got to get stuff done for the people.
You've ran some of the highest profile campaigns in the state on the Democrat side. When the top of the ticket's down 20 points, what do you do?
There's really nothing, especially when you have that late breaking wave. In a state where your top of the ticket loses by 19 points, there's very little you can do to right that ship.
Robert Cornell, interesting. It looks like Governor Greitens came out of election night with a pretty responsible tone. It looks like he's putting together a group of people that are pretty representative of the state. I know being in Jefferson City Wednesday, seeing him with the governor, looks like he's off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, absolutely. I know some of the areas where he's not as strong on policy, such as agriculture. I know he's going to be relying heavily on Mike Parsons, somebody who's been out there with Right to Farm and things like that. Somebody who's very involved in policy with ag decisions. He's also brought in former Treasurer Sarah Steelman to help out. So, he's putting the right people around him. I think one of the sayings is, the smartest man in the room who is the guy who realizes he's not the smartest man and puts smarter people around him.
Right. After he won a campaign like he won, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted after, and you're probably going to have early reviews. But obviously there's some things that are loaded up that'll pass, from right to work to paycheck protection to maybe some tort reform issues. However, when those things are gone, it looks like he's taking a track of offering some fig leaves to people and bringing together a group that might last 4 years.
I think he's a good leader, and as Jack was saying, he knows how to depend on the people that have experience, and that's how he's gotten to where he is today, and that's how he's going to continue.
The guy on your right shoulder can save your life, or you have to save his life.
Exactly.
You learn to depend on people, and you put your trust in them, and that's it. And you don't worry about anything else. In the political world, they may put their trust in people, and I heard that a lot of times. but you can't really trust them 100%. You still kind of look out because you don't know where they're coming from. I think Eric's going to take it more like he's used to, and he's going to put his trust in them, and he's going to let it go.
I think the one thing he's got to look out for, though, Republicans, if you'll remember, were in the almost exact same position after the 2004 elections. They had taken over the governorship, they had the House and Senate, and the one thing they did the very next legislative session is they overreached, and they paid a dear political price for that. 2008 and 2012 elections were really good for the Democrats. Can Governor Greitens not overreach, not look like he's trying to attack his political opponents, and instead get things done for the people of Missouri? That's going to be the real true question here next year.
I think, Jack, you've been in rooms where the governor was taken over. I think he's set up for an outstanding first 2 or 3 months of legislative session. If the revenue numbers, and they don't have to cut, it looks to me like Governor Greitens has all the opportunity to have a great first year.
Yeah, look, as long as they don't overreach, he's going to be able to get some stuff done and have a story to tell. If he goes too far and if he does stuff that looks ultra political and he doesn't handle the things that come at him, that's the one difference between being an executive and being a legislator. When you're sitting there in the governor's office, 10 different things come at you every day. And you've got to realize, what do we have to do and how do we have to act? I mean, if you look at Governor Nixon, obviously was just on. The discipline he had to act quickly on the budget and to make sure we were in fiscal balance is hard to do, and especially without any experience. If he's able up to that task, he'll do well. If not, it'll show pretty early.
Robert Corneo, it's an interesting thing. Republicans have looked very, very smart the last 3 election cycles. Consultants, candidates. You don't have Barack Obama to kick around anymore. Now you have President Trump. I think that might be a little different 2018 than we might have thought was coming.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what Mr. Cardetti said, I think the perfect example is Colorado, where, back in Colorado, there was this huge wave of Democrats that got elected. They went too far, and if you recall, a couple legislators got recalled on some gun legislation because I think they took it a bridge too far. So, again, I think need to listen to the people in our districts, listen to what they're saying as far as the conservative agenda. Obviously, they want a conservative agenda and not go that bridge too far.
Jack Corday, there's also a time, this reminds me of, is 1993. Republicans were in the same spot Democrats are in today. They had a Democratic president they were able to run off of in 2 years. It worked out well for the Republicans. It looks to me like the people that are saying the Democrat Party is no longer an opposition party in the state, it's going to be like Kansas. That might have been the case, except for Donald Trump must be the one flickering hope for Missouri Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of the governor's races are up in 2018, a ton of U.S. Senate races, some really important races around the country. And Republicans are really, their fate lies in the hands of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He had a very simple message on the campaign trail, which is, you guys are being hurt and you should have better jobs, and I'm just going to get you those better jobs. That's an easy message to deliver on the campaign trail. It's hard to do in real life. And if he's not able to show progress on that, and if he's not able to get his temperament under control, it will hurt the entire Republican Party up and down.
Representative Havener, it's great that you're on. You're in a district that is not overwhelmingly conservative Republican. You're in a district where you have to campaign and you have to listen to people. You're in a district that if I was a Democrat, I'd be looking at running in if Donald Trump's unsuccessful. It's places like South County, a place where if he doesn't fulfill on these pretty lofty promises, there could be a prize for state Republicans in 2018.
There could. We have a big job ahead of us, and it's important that we pass meaningful legislation and policy that really matters, that trickles down to the working people and to families. And we've got a lot of work to do.
Jack Sweeney, I'm interested, some folks thought Claire McCaskill might be in the cabinet. That probably isn't the case today. Interesting thing, folks are already kind of sizing stuff up for 2 years from now, but she would be an interesting person. I don't think you're going to be able to push her or score cheap shots off her. She's going to fight back.
Well, Claire, yeah, but it is a lot is going to depend on how the state does and how the country does. I do think that the Republican Party is going to keep the promises and move forward and do the things that we say we're going to do this year. And I think 18 is going to be fairly consistent with what we saw this year.
Robert Gordell, you think you can hold all those seats? I mean, it's an off year, but 2018, people forget, is the year a lot of the House seats are open. It's the big class where the most open seats are. To me, that's a little bit scary time to be going to a midterms with President Trump. What can he really do to help Missouri?
Let's just say, I think regardless of who was going to win the presidential election, the number one thing when you ask Missourians is, what are you most worried about? It's not jobs, the economy. It's actually the overreach of the federal government. You know, and I think as long as we as state legislators keep pushing back against the federal government, even if it is President Trump, and get that message out to our voters, we'll be successful.
Jack Reddy, is there a way to go out to rural Missourians and get them to vote Democrat? Or do Democrats need to look at St. Charles, Jefferson County, Clay County for some pickups?
Of course, you have to have a consistent middle-class economic message. The governor, Jay Nixon's been on the statewide ballot every year since '92, every 4 years, and he's won every 4 years because he was able to relate to that. Claire McCaskill does an excellent job at that. You look at how many counties she won in 2012, and the fact that now, instead of Hillary Clinton in the White House, there's going to be Donald Trump in the White House, much like there was when George Bush was president in '06. She's going to be able to prosecute a really good case, and you won't see Claire just in St. Louis, Kansas City. You'll see her, if she chooses to run for re-election, you'll see her all over the state, and she is a populist, and she's something that can really relate to what middle-class families want and need.
What would you tell the Missouri Democrats to do right now after this defeat?
Well, I would say buck yourself up. We've been here before. Get off the mat and go out there and start to talk about the economy. It's the economy, stupid. That's one thing that Hillary Clinton never had a great economic message. Her message was Donald Trump is a disaster, and he was a disaster. But at the end of the day, he was able to have a message on the economy that really related to people that felt like they were getting the short end of the stick.
Representative, though, in the race for the worst person in America, Donald Trump came in second to Hillary Clinton. I mean, she clearly was an awful candidate.
She was, and I have to disagree that Donald Trump is an awful candidate. It's just he related to people that haven't mattered for a very long time, and he's not filtered, and he has to work on that. But his message is strong, and I like it that he wants more power back to the states instead of the federal government.
Jack Spooner, it's as plain as two flag stores in St. James that Donald Trump knows how to relate to Missourians.
Well, he's going to have to rely on some help within the state, Eric Crichton, for example. But yeah, he is able to send that message out broadly. And from what I hear when people meet him, they feel that he's sincere and that he does mean what he says. And I think he'll be fine. I really do believe 18 is going to be a good year for Republicans.
Representative Corneo, Jack Spooner, Jack Reddy, Representative Hafer, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back here next week, like every week, to talk about Governor Greitens, the legislature, the upcoming session on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.